This frame is very dangerous. It really complexifies things for the faith community. If you look at polling on where various faith communities are on discrimination, they're very opposed to discrimination, even if they're not pro-gay marriage. Even the most conservative ones, very much, they don't want to be seen as discriminatory. They know that's, if nothing else, bad for their brand and bad for their religion, But where it gets really complicated is, conservatives have a brilliant strategy here. They've cloaked something very ugly under the guise of something really beautiful, religious freedom. And so many of the religious groups we work with, whether they're Catholic or Jewish, they've experienced throughout the course of their history in America religious discrimination as religious minorities. It's hard for us to think of Catholics that way nowadays, but in the beginning, we didn't want a Catholic president. And so, and then, in addition to that, it gets into the arena of constitutional law and all this legal stuff, and then you have to be a lawyer, right? And so people feel like very overwhelmed with this frame. Even initially, when we called some of our sort of usual suspects and progressive allies, they heard the words religious freedom, and we would warn them. In this case, it was Georgia, that there's going to be a bill, religious freedom bill, introduced. Right away, they were like, "Oh, great, wonderful," And we had to say, "Whoa, this is not your mom's religious freedom. This is not the 1990s federal RFRA that we worked for." So there's a lot of misinformation out there, even though this has become a national media sensation in Indiana. We had national news coverage of this issue with the Arizona case, and nobody remembered that, when we got in touch with them. So it required on our part a lot of deep digging in order to be able to get to folks and dispel this frame and reset it. The other challenge in a state like Georgia is most of that state is Baptist. Like, it is way over 50% Baptist. And in this case, the ADF was really smart. They have the Georgia Baptist Convention leading on this bill. Right. And so it looks really legitimate to people. And so to win on this issue, we have to deploy religious voices. To the question that you raised earlier, isn't the business community going to come out vocally and oppose this like they did in Indiana? In Georgia, the business community has been great behind the scenes, but they're not willing to really speak of this loudly and publicly. And so in Georgia, it was absolutely critical that we had a voice that was legitimate to the constituents of Georgia and that could take away this idea that religious leaders support this religious freedom bill. We had to flip the frame, make sure that people knew religious leaders didn't support this, they didn't ask for it, and that it wasn't about religious freedom, it was about discrimination. We've also been working with evangelicals, which of course, we all think of as the hardest group to work with. We have a national project in which our organizer, who went to Moody Bible Institute, so he knows this terrain really well, right? He is going around meeting one-on-one with leading evangelical leaders, including one of the pastors who has the second largest evangelical congregation, or it's actually a Baptist congregation in the country, Andy Stanley. And I'm really excited to say that people are eager to step out on gay marriage. A lot of folks are evolving, as we say, and I think one of the things we need to do is create a climate in which they can step out safely and also be supported with media strategy, because what happens is there's this media firestorm that they're not always prepared and equipped to wrestle with. So there's a lot of hope, I think, even in the evangelical community. Again, this religious freedom frame sets us back a little bit. Because I think the right really was very smart in coming up with this, because they see where their young people are going. If you look at polling on young evangelicals, one of the reasons so many folks are leaving faith and going to other denominations is because of the anti-gay position. So they knew that they had to come up with something that would complexify the situation.